Oh, okay. Yes, we did. We swapped it to two. Sorry, Brendan. This is the second mic from Kaz's camera. Mic 2 on camera 1, because I'm on it. Welcome to Kingston.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 2023 Dockerty Cup Final, live from Kingston Heath. It is Heidelberg United versus the Oakleigh Cannons. My name is Josh Parrish, and I'm joined tonight by Nick Dabano and Lockie Flanagan for the broadcast. Gentlemen, welcome.
Great to be here, Josh. The heavens have opened, perfectly timed right before kickoff. Really looking forward to an exciting Dockerty Cup Final. They never really disappoint.
Well, one of the most historic trophies in Australian football, the 98th iteration of the Dockerty Cup Final tonight, which started back in 1909, Nick, and look at this impressive prize in front of us.
Yeah, I mean, it's massive, it's huge. I feel like if I actually make one gesture, it's just going to fall over. I'm trying to be careful of it. It's magnificent. This is obviously what the two teams are playing for tonight, and obviously Oakleigh last year, so close yet so far in the end, falling against Bentley Greens, the actual tenants of this.
Well, their name would be
venue. Yeah,
right
their
on that
name is
trophy.
etched on that trophy, and Heidelberg looking to get a little bit of silverware after what's been a bit of a disappointing 2023 so far.
Well, we'll start with the team news tonight, and there's been a lot of speculation about the goalkeeper for Oakleigh. We were looking at injury doubts and clouds, and maybe even an outfielder donning the gloves between the sticks. There is no backup keeper on the bench tonight, but Nick Feely makes a late return from injury, Lockie, to start this game. A massive in for Oakleigh.
Yeah, and it went right down to the wire, Josh. Obviously, last week against Avondale, they had neither of their first-choice senior keepers available. 18-year-old George Bitsios started between the sticks. We thought that might happen this week, but what a well-timed re-entry for Nick Feely, the man who was so pivotal when they met in a knockout game last year.
Yeah, I mean, that elimination final lives long in the memory. The last second goal from Sean Ellis going to penalties, and then two saves from Nick Feely, playing through injury in that game, Nick.
Yeah, it's almost become part of NPL Victoria folklore a little bit now, knowing that Nick Feely did that with, a busted hip, and he was able to, will Oakleigh over the line. And we all know what happened 2 weeks later when they went on and won the grand final. During that period as well, they were in the midst of their Australia Cup run. They beat Sydney FC during that period. It was an incredible time for Oakleigh, and it kind of feels like, I don't know about you, a bit of deja vu at the moment. Nick Feely is bravely playing on today, which is great news for Oakleigh, great news for Chris Taylor, because the last thing they would have wanted is another goalkeeper crisis at this stage of the season.
Well, looking through the rest of the team sheet, Lockie, a big out in midfield in Cam McGilp. So Daniel Clark slots in. What do you think that'll do to the team?
Well, it gives them maybe a fraction less defensive steel. McGilp is the out-and-out number 6 in this lineup, usually sharing those defensive responsibilities with Oliver Kuberle, but Daniel Clark's got a bit more of an attacking zeal. He has played in the front three as well previously at Oakleigh, so it probably makes it a bit more of an attacking balance, but it'll be interesting to see how that matches up with the combative midfield battle that we expect today.
For Heidelberg, Nick, not too many big outs, but Kenny Athew is the one that stands out as someone who'll miss this game. Big loss up front.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, Sean Ellis and Kane Shepherd will almost act as that little bit of a partnership up top. Ellis maybe playing behind. We don't know if he might even start on the left. We've seen a bit of alterations throughout this year with that. They're obviously missing Apostolopoulos as well. Johnny Apostolopoulos, who came along from Northcote during the mid-season window. He's out with suspension. Amir Abdullah as well, who is a big out, a really good signing for them in the mid-season window. We saw how good he was prior to leaving Heidelberg, and he's come back now this season. So another big out, another sort of attacking option they would have loved to have at their disposal tonight. So, they're going to have to tinker that attacking sort of units. And it has been a bit, tough for them in the last few weeks going forward. So we'll see what they can do tonight, because in Dockerty Cup, it hasn't really been much of an issue for them in attack.
Well, it certainly hasn't, with Kane Shepherd providing the goals. We'll get into him a little bit later, but let's talk about the recent history between these two teams, Lockie. The Oakleigh Cannons have been absolutely dominant in recent meetings, 5-0 and 5-1 in rounds 4 and 17 this season.
Yeah, 10-1. It's not an answer at the time. It's the cumulative scorelines between these two sides, home and away this season. Oakleigh have it's really surprising, because over the stretch historically, these two teams have played really, really, close battles together, always running each other really tight, but Oakleigh have just blown Heidelberg away this season. They have reinforced the champions with some serious attacking firepower, and one of those reinforcements, Stefan Valentini, was on full display in the game that's currently overlaying at the moment, scoring a hat-trick and the opening goal inside 60 seconds. I'm sure we'll be hoping to repeat that trick tonight, but it is a big test that awaits George Katsakis' side, given the recent meetings.
Well, I guess it lives long in the memory, that elimination final game from last season. Heidelberg, they get up for the big occasions, Nick, and they almost got over the line last year.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, compared to this year when Lockie mentioned that 10-1 aggregate score, it feels like an eternity ago, but really it was less than 12 months ago now, and that was such a crazy game, that 3-all. Just going back to that 5-0 back there for a second, that was also a crazy game in its own right, because Chris Theodoridis and Joe Guest had that little bit of an incident at the start. Joe Guest got sent off, and then, Oakleigh from there went on and won 5-0. At the time it was 0-0 as well, and they ran away with a pretty impressive win at the time. But, going back to that 3-3, that was also just a bonkers game. And everyone remembers that Short Alice free kick right at the end. And I think almost everyone remembers where they were when that ball
I do. I was right behind the goals.
You willed it all the way into the top corner there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Let's talk about the head-to-head between these two coaches, two of the doyens of Victorian football, part of, I guess, the big three alongside Johnny A, who's gone on to bigger things in the A-League as an assistant coach, but 30 games they've played against each other, dating back to 2006 when George Katsakis' Kingston City defeated Chris Taylor's Sunshine George Cross 1-0. But since then, the record is tipped in favour of CT. 17 wins, 6 draws, and 17 wins for Chris Taylor, 6 draws, and 7 wins for George Katsakis. But they've never played against each other in a grand final or a Dockerty Cup final, Nick. So this is the first showpiece meeting between these two storied coaches.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know what we've seen in George Katsakis' coaching career. These are the games he gets up for, the one-off games where all form goes out the window, and it's just about what happens in those 90 minutes. So as much as they've never met in these games, and we've seen before that, Chris Taylor has the edge of him going back to the days at South Melbourne, the time at Oakleigh, even before that as well. It all goes out the window today. It's such a cliche, and you throw the fact that one team's third and one team's struggled and down near the bottom this season. This is a one-off. This is 90 minutes. We've seen what Heidelberg have done, even in this run just to get here, beating some of the heavyweights in Victorian football. So really fascinated to see how that one plays out.
Lockie, how would you compare and contrast CT and Cats as coaches in terms of their sideline manner? Because they couldn't really be more different.
No, it's, they definitely do both have their position on this sort of NPL Victoria Mount Rushmore when it comes to coaches, but they've chiseled from very different stone. They're cut from different cloth. I mean, George Katsakis is up there with one of the most emotive, and I mean this as a compliment to him, managers in the NPL Victoria, whereas CT is probably the least. You don't get a lot of a read from Chris Taylor by looking at him. He usually keeps to himself. So there'll definitely be a lot of airspace tonight taken up by Cats on the touchline. Work to do for the fourth official, Ross Clark, but Chris Taylor may have the last laugh. Who knows?
Well, looking at the trophies won, CT has the edge, 9 to George Katsakis' 6. But these are incredible stats. 4 premierships for CT, 3 championships, 2 Dockerty Cups across 3 different clubs. Whereas for George Katsakis, it all started back in 2017 with Heidelberg. All of those trophies won there. 3 premierships, a championship, an NPL National Finals, and a Dockerty Cup with Heidelberg. So let's move on to the Oakleigh Cannons. They've had an impressive NPL season, and their Dockerty Cup run has been pretty faultless all through the Australia Cup rounds, Nick. And Lockie, coming up to that Dockerty Cup semi-final against the Melbourne Knights, they were so ready for that game.
Yeah, they were absolutely on it. I mean, I was really interested calling this semi-final going into it. The 2 previous meetings between the Knights and the regular season had both ended in draws. They were both super, super competitive. Nothing to split the 2 sides. I was expecting more of the same in the semi, but Oakleigh were just pitch perfect in that game. Melbourne Knights had no response. You do wonder, though, the amount of effort they put into that game in the semi. They haven't got a win to their name since. Has it taken a bit out of them? I guess we'll find out.
Well, it's hard to find fault with the Oakleigh Cannons this season, Nick, but just the recent dip in form, a scoreless draw with Avondale last week, and then prior to that, 2 defeats to Altona Magic and Port Melbourne. We talk about the load and the amount of games they've had to play, but that is a bit of a concern.
Yeah, well, we speak about deja vu. This was literally exactly the same thing that happened with Oakleigh. It just felt like that the results in the regular season started to dip as there was a lot of other games happening, a lot of shorter turnarounds, the Dockerty Cup, the Australia Cup starting soon as well. Not having the biggest squad, injuries start to, kick in at that stage as well. So, you know what, yes, it's a concern, but we've learnt with Oakleigh, you just need to be in it. You get into the finals, and we saw they did it from 3rd last year. So, and look, the teams they were playing were desperate at that point as well. Avondale looking to wrap up the premiership. You look at Altona battling for a final spot, Port Melbourne battling for a home elimination final, which is really, really important. So I wouldn't be reading too much into it. I still think that when the whips are cracking, when it comes to finals time, they'll be just fine.
Who's your player to watch from Oakleigh tonight, Lockie?
Well, it's the obvious answer, isn't it, Josh? It has to be Joe Guest. I mean, a gold medalist in 2019, the Bill Fleming medalist last year, and another outstanding season. And he is rivaling his gold medal numbers in the league at the present moment. I think it's 5 goals and 15 assists. 15 assists in a regular season. It's quite something, and he has 3 to his name in the Dockerty Cup, goals-wise as well. So sometimes the simplest answer is the best one, Josh, and I think in Joe Guest's case it certainly is.
And a lot of those assists would have come off set pieces. You know, Oakleigh actually bringing in a set piece coach.
Delivery is otherworldly. So
they were already dominant off set pieces. They brought in a set piece coach in pre-season, we've heard, to even further hone that, and they are just devastating when you give away free kicks and corners.
Yeah, and you speak about the set piece coach. What about the people that are on the end of it? They've brought in someone who he's familiar with from his time in England, in Connor Hampson, obviously from Curzon Ashton as well. He's come along and he's scored 5 goals this season. I mean, he's been dominant from set pieces, such a presence. So, yes, you can have someone who's whipping the ball and you can have your set piece coach. But at the end of the day, you've got to have someone who's going to put in the back of the net, and Connor Hampson has been that. He's almost been like another attacker for them this season. And they've already just got an impressive array of attacking options as it is that, you know, when you can bench the likes of Chris Lucas and Wade Decker and, you know, you're still blessed with attacking options. It's an embarrassment of riches.
He has this habit of just ghosting into the penalty area. Opposition teams can't mark him. He's not the tallest Oakleigh player, but he always seems to get free. It's unbelievable. Yeah. I'm going to go with my player to watch. I'm going for Brodie Boyce at the back. Still a young man in his early 20s. Came in pre-season. I believe he had to trial to get his spot there. And now he's played every single minute for Oakleigh this season in the league. No other player has done that. He has been absolutely indispensable. And a rock at the back, and Heidelberg are going to be hard-pressed to find a way past him. But let's talk about the 2022 Dockerty Cup final. Let's rewind a year back to Lakeside, where Oakleigh were in the driver's seat, 1-0 up from a Joe Guest goal. And then the comeback happened from a short-handed Bentley Green side, Yagub Mustafa coming off the bench to spearhead an unlikely comeback in the last 10 minutes, Lockie, and that left a bitter taste in the mouths of Oakleigh.
I think it really did. I mean, it's easy to gloss over it given they still had an exemplary season, making the semi-finals in the Australia Cup, obviously the championship. But this is the one piece of silverware that has slipped them by over the stretch. And I think the main thing is, for tonight, Josh, they'll just be glad they're not playing this game at Lakeside Stadium. 2 Dockerty Cup finals at Lakeside, 2 defeats. Here at Kingston Heath, anything could happen for the Cannons.
And they've already lifted silverware here earlier this season with the Community Shield. So, I mean, there will be some regrets from last year, some big chances missed. I remember Joe Knowles blazed one over from the penalty spot. Wade Decker curled one wide. Do you think that, I guess that regret and that missed opportunity to win another trophy will be a motivating factor tonight, Nick?
Oh, absolutely. It's righting that wrong. I mean, they had, I don't want to call it a flawless season. When you look back on that 2022 Oakleigh season, it is probably the best in the club's history, one of the best in Victorian football history, given what they did in the Australia Cup as well, given what they were able to do in the championship. When you consider the context that with all the injuries and everything they were going through at that point, the short turnaround, it was an unbelievable feat, and the way they won that grand final too. But the one blemish is that Dockerty Cup final, knowing they were up 1-0, it was in their control. They had the game basically won. The cup was in their hands and they dropped it at the key point. I don't think they'd want to let history repeat itself tonight.
Let's talk about the Burgers. Sitting 10th in the league this season, Lockie. It's been a rough old time of it, but they've made the cup run something of a welcome distraction.
It certainly has been. It's been quite remarkable, actually, Josh, how contrasting their league and cup form this season has been. I mean, this is the first time in the NPL era, I think, that Heidelberg are guaranteed to miss the finals. That's how good they've been over the course of a 26-game season. Nothing really sums up the contrast, I think, though, Josh, better than their games against Avondale this season. They went down 8-2 in their first meeting in the league to the league leaders. In the cup, beat them 1-0. An Avondale team who had not lost at that point of the season. It was a result that they pulled out of the ether. And that seems to be the special source of George Katsakis' brand of coaching, is being able to get his team up and about for a one-off game. That was then, and I'm sure they can potentially use the same winning formula tonight.
And they did it for Cats in his 350th at Lakeside,
Absolutely.
beating South Melbourne when nobody expected them to. They've got big game performers in this team, Nick.
They do. It's just unfortunate we haven't seen enough of it this season, because there's been so many times this year where they get that result. I remember thinking after that South Melbourne game, okay, now they're going to start to get things.
How many lines of the sand have they drawn?
It was almost like you were just waiting for it, the inevitability that Heidelberg were eventually going to close in and snare a final spot after all that, after such a tough start to the season. But in the end, it just hasn't really gone for them. But they still have players, individual quality, that can win a game on any given day for them. So you can't completely rub them off in this sort of game. You know that George Katakis is going to get them up for these sort of games. And I'm fascinated because, you know, yes, you can look at the score lines this season. You can easily pin the 10-1, but it's 90 minutes. It's a fresh 90 minutes, an opportunity. This weather might cause some havoc as well. You know, you can't really play your style in this. It's going to become dirty. It's going to be fascinating. So I'm looking forward to seeing how it all plays out.
Well, in a match like tonight, you need a moment of quality. Lockie, stick your neck out here. Will it be Sean Ellis? Will it be Kane Shepherd?
It's hard to pick, Josh. It really is, because obviously Sean Ellis created possibly one of the best individual moments we've ever seen in NPL Victoria in that elimination final, as we've gone at lengths to explain over the course of this broadcast. But I think it has to be Kane Shepherd, because once again, you talk about that distinction between league and cup form. Shepherd, reigning gold medalist in the comp, he hasn't quite recaptured those heights in the league, just 4 goals to his name in NPL Victoria. But in the Dockerty Cup, 7 goals. He's scored in every single game in the lead up to the final. It has to be Kane Shepherd for mine.
Nick, could it be an Ellis cross for a Shepherd header?
You know what? Maybe it might be the other way around. Who knows? But I think those two are going to have a big save. Heidelberg's going to win today. They're going to be the 2 guys you'd expect to be getting involved in some shape or form, getting some sort of scoring contribution. So, but Lockie, I like your point. Kane Shepherd has been just almost unplayable in this run throughout to the Dockerty Cup / Australia Cup. And right now, they're going to have to rely on him. Without Kenny Athieu, he is the guy tonight. So I'm fascinated to see how he comes out and performs.
Well, before I let you guys go, we've got to talk about the last time that Heidelberg United made the Dockerty Cup final. It was all the way back in 2017 when they beat the Bentley Greens on penalties. 2 players in tonight's squad were on the pitch that day, coming off the bench to score in the shootout, Lockie.
Yeah, and I think watching that game back in the lead up to this one, the really fundamental standout point as it relates to this game is sort of what we've been talking about in terms of standout players. Heidelberg have not been at their best this season. We know that much. That's been communicated. As a team, as a unit, they haven't always performed as well as they would have expected this season. But they're individual players in a one-off game, in a do-or-die fixture. That star quality counts more than ever. And to that end, I think that's why this final is so important, because the big players stepped up. They don't have Kenny Athieu playing for them tonight, but in this game he was pivotal, scoring that late equaliser, and then Chris Theodoridis was an absolute hero in the penalty shootout. Those kind of players stood up to be counted. Who is going to do that for Heidelberg tonight? I think that's the key question in deciding this contest.
Well, fellas, before I let you go, I've got to get a prediction. Who's coming home with this impressive trophy?
Buy me a few more seconds, Lockie. You go first, mate.
I'm going to say it's a 2-2 draw. Heidelberg on penalties.
Wow.
Oof.
One better than
it's
the
a hard act
elimination
to follow,
final.
Nick. It's a hard act to follow.
Yeah, I can't top that. I'm going to be boring. 2-1 Oakleigh.
I'm going to go 3-2 Oakleigh, but there's not much in it. When Heidelberg get up for a big game, they can defy the odds, so I won't be surprised if it flips the other way. Gentlemen, the rain is coming in sideways. I'll let you take shelter in the commentary box. Enjoy the call.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Josh.
Well, before we go to our live broadcast, we're going to catch up with the head coaches of both sides. I spoke to Oakleigh Cannons head coach Chris Taylor before the game. I'm here with Chris Taylor, head coach of the Oakleigh Cannons. CT, chance to go one better than last year?
Oh, that's what we're hoping. I mean, it was a tough one to take last year, getting beat, 10 minutes to go. But, yeah, that's what football's about. And we're here again, and hopefully we can take it out this year.
Another addition in the CT Cats coaching rivalry. You've got the edge in the head-to-head, by the way.
Oh, look, I wouldn't really know. I mean, George has been very successful as well. So, you know, sometimes it's about what you win at the end of the day. And I think we've both won a few trophies. So that's what you get measured on, I suppose.
I have to ask you about the goalkeeping situation. It seems like deja vu from last year with the amount of injuries you've got back there. What does it look like tonight?
Yeah, we've got one of the boys in with gloves on, so that's who we'll start with. No, look, we are still deciding, so it's one of those things. We've got the young boy, but he's been concussed, so we're looking at every option at the moment. But it's not a good thing, but, you know, whoever goes out there will put the best foot forward.
Well, at least you got some first-choice defenders in there, unlike last season's final.
Yeah. I mean, look, the boys have been playing well at the back. You know, I think we've got a good side, but you know, on these sort of days, and Heidelberg are quite experienced at taking out trophies as well. So we've got to respect them. We know they're a good side, and I think they beat Avondale in this competition and beat South Melbourne in the league. So you've got to respect them.
Chris, thanks for your time and best of luck for the game.
Thank you. Cheers. Ta.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Had to say before the big game, I also had a chance to catch up with Heidelberg United head coach George Katsakis. I'm here pre-match with Heidelberg United's head coach George Katsakis. George, congratulations, your first Dockerty Cup final since 2017. What does it mean for the club to get here?
Oh, look, considering the season we've had, it's absolutely huge, you know. We're all excited. The group itself has limited our chances to only this trophy now, so as well as the Australia Cup, no doubt. But this is the one on hand today, you know. Tonight's a big night for the club, for the boys, particularly for the newer group.
This squad has shown a propensity to get up for the big games. You had a big win away at Lakeside earlier this year. This cup run's been immense. I guess this group can turn it on when they need to.
Yeah, look, that's been the funny thing about the whole season. You know, we've been able to turn games or turn a week apart from each other into a different scenario, and it's just been incredible. So, look, I think they're up for it. I think they can adjust fairly well. So, I'm really looking forward to it.
And it's another edition in this coaching rivalry between you and CT. You've faced each other 30 times over the years. Two of the preeminent coaches. What does it mean to come up against him in the dugout?
Oh, look, very respectful of Chris and everything he's achieved. And, you know, it's always an honour to be playing against him in any game, be it a league game or a cup game. But, you know, I don't think we've played too many finals against each other, but I think there's only a few, you know, that we have, and it's great to be alongside him again this weekend or tonight, and playing in a grand final.
Absolutely. And talking about the team selection, no Kenny Athieu this time. How do you compensate for the loss of King Kenny up front?
Yeah, look, Kenny's been a big loss for us this year, but some of the boys that have come in have done a decent job, managed to get or score quite a few goals in this competition, and that's been really important. You know, the catalyst to Kenny's absence has been the boys that have stepped in for him. So, you know, I expect nothing different from the boys that are going to be or are selected tonight, and hopefully they can do the job for us.
Another nail biter like the elimination final last year, you reckon?
Look, I prefer not to, but if it means we have to get to that, then we get to that. But you know, look, I think it's going to be a great game. I think both teams are up for it. Both have had a lot of success of late, so I think all the players will be anxious to win.
Well, Cats, good luck for the game, mate.
Thanks very much, guys. Cheers, mate.
Thank you. It is game time, ladies and gentlemen. Oakleigh Cannons versus Heidelberg United in the 2023 Dockerty Cup final. Your commentators are Lockie Flanagan and Nick DeBano.
We pay our respects to elders of the past and present. We extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that may also be present with us today.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for the main event here at Kingston Heath Soccer Complex. Good evening and welcome to you, wherever you may be joining us from, for the 2023 Dockerty Cup final. The 218-team eliminator is down to the final two. Battling it out tonight to decide who gets to lift the coveted Dockerty Cup. It should be an absolute cracker. The reigning champions of NPL Victoria, Oakleigh Cannons, taking on one of the historical powerhouses of Victorian football, Heidelberg United, in a game between two of the NPL Victorias in this era. Great sides, always at the top end of the table. It's a cracker, whichever way you choose to cut it. But the theme of tonight's Dockerty Cup final, redemption. That's what's up for grabs here tonight. In addition to the Dockerty Cup final at Kingston Heath, 4 Oakleigh Cannons looking to avenge the disappointment of 2022, going down in heartbreaking fashion in the final to Bentley Greens. They'll be looking to make good and finally get their hands on the coveted cup competition. Meanwhile, for Heidelberg United, it is a chance to really salvage what's been an otherwise disappointing season in the league, sitting in 10th, 30 points off their opponents today in the Oakleigh Cannons. But despite their difficulties in the league, guaranteed to miss finals for the first time in the NPL Victoria era, they are 190 minutes away from potentially turning a season of disappointment into one of delight and hoisting George Katsakis' and Heidelberg United's second Dockerty Cup. The rain is absolutely driving down here at Kingston Heath in Cheltenham, as I'm sure you can see, so the best place for you to be situated is with us on the broadcast tonight. Lockie Flanagan taking you through the action. We'll have Josh Parrish down on the boundary providing updates throughout the games. As the teams come out, I'm going to welcome in my co-commentator in the booth, DeBano. Nick, a massive Dockerty Cup final in prospect. They're always big. It's always big when these two teams meet, but we're about to get underway.
Can't wait for it, Lockie. Thank you very much for the introduction. Yes, we're situated nice and high here in the commentary booth and don't have to worry too much about that rain. But I tell you what, it is coming down. It feels a little bit like deja vu, Lockie, going back to that 2022 NPL Victoria Grand Final. Obviously, Oakleigh played South Melbourne that day. And the Cup final, it's raining again. Might be a good omen for Oakleigh there, Lockie, but this is going to be fascinating. As you said, it's been a tough season for Heidelberg. A chance for them to salvage something from this year. Obviously, they can't go down. They can't make the finals, but they've still got some silverware to compete for. And for Oakleigh, an opportunity to get their first bit of silverware before they start, turning their attention to finals and also the Australia Cup too.
All in readiness here then at Kingston Heath. Heidelberg, of course, in the traditional yellow, and you can see the strips billowing against the bodies of these athletes that are getting ready to go because it is windy as well as the rain that is driving down. To the team news then, and there is a big change. Just the one for Chris Taylor's side after their 0-0 draw with Avondale last week, but it is a very big change. 18-year-old goalkeeper George Bitsios was a late in against Avondale after regular starting first-choice keeper Lockie Hart injured himself in the warm-up. The other first-choice keeper who was injured at that time was Nick Feely, who of course had a marvelous performance against Heidelberg in the elimination final last year. Well, he has passed a last-minute fitness test to get back into the side today, and he headlines what is otherwise, Nick, a full-strength 11 for Oakleigh.
Yeah, absolutely. A very, very strong 11 here that Chris Taylor's been able to put out. I'm fascinated to see how this double pivot works out with Daniel Clark playing a little bit deeper alongside Ollie Kublai. We know Kublay's going to be able to shield a little bit more, give Daniel Clark a little bit more license to get forward. It's going to be fascinating to see how it comes out. A very, very attacking team here from Oakleigh. They've already put 10 past Heidelberg this year in both those games, so it'll be fascinating to see if it's more of the same tonight or if maybe Heidelberg are a little bit more sound defensively and know what's coming the other way.
Meanwhile, for the Burgers, it is changes aplenty from the side that suffered 2-1 defeat to Moreland City last round of NPL Victoria. They had a number of players serving their suspensions. Well timed, we dare say, given they're all available for the final. Out go Muhammad Aidara to the bench. Johnny Apostolopoulos was red carded in that game. He drops out altogether. And Dom Fala and Amir Abdallah also drop out. In their stead, Anthony Lesiotis, Sean Ellis, one of Heidelberg's favourite sons, returns. Anthony Theo and Aiden Fedahajic are in. As we get underway here in the 2023 Dockerty Cup, Oakleigh Cannons attacking the right-hand side of screen in the first half. It's the golf course end here at Heath. And it will be the reigning champions of NPL Victoria with the early possession. Is this a trend you expect to see play out over the course of the game? Obviously, Oakleigh, the better side on form going into this game. Will they control the most of the possession? We'll hold that thought for a moment as it's clipped towards Salmon. And Valentini was the player keeping it alive in the corner. A hat-trick against Heidelberg last time these two sides met. A 5-0 win for Oakleigh back in round 17. Stefan Valentini had the ball in the back of the net after 54 seconds in that game, so he hasn't quite recaptured the heights. But Nick, back to my original question.
Yeah, I think so. I think we're going to see Heidelberg try and hit off the break, try and frustrate Oakleigh a little bit, try and get them into making mistakes in those sort of areas to allow for them to spring on the counter-attack. We'll just leave for just a sec, Lockie, because we know how dangerous Oakleigh can be from these set pieces, and guess who is standing over it?
They've scored more set-piece goals than any other side this season. And it's driven in low by Guest, hooked away unconvincingly by Zara. And Mlinaric attempted to keep it alive, and in the end it's going to be a Heidelberg ball. Credit the endeavour of Heidelberg youngster Dion Nicolaides. Our referee team, you could see the man in the middle whistling for it, all in the resplendent red this evening, Nick, to avoid, it's a one-off referee's kit to avoid a potential colour clash of between yellow and blue. Man in the middle is Yanni Zizis. Fourth official, Ross Clark, and the assistants are Mark Tito and Astro Sakalis. Here's Alex Salmon firing a ball in behind for the Queenslander, Alex Fechner. Wants to cut in onto the left boot, flicks it across invitingly past the face of goal. Daniel Clark will keep it alive, stands it up, looking to return the favour to Fechner. And he thought that he was marshalled off the ball, but play continues. And a good interception once again by Dion Nicolaides, the 20-year-old, with a bright start to this game. As you suggested, Nick, it has been Oakleigh taking control of the vast majority of the possession early doors.
Yeah, absolutely. They've been able to get comfortable in possession early as well. Just leave for just a sec.
Stood up towards Valentini at the back post, and he heads just wide.
Yeah, again there, that's a very, very delightful ball into the area. And I have noticed early in this game, Lockie, that when Oakleigh have been able to get the ball out to this right-hand side, there's actually been quite a lot of space for the attackers inside the box. The Heidelberg defence need to be a little bit more wary. I mean, Stefan Valentini isn't the tallest player, but you can't afford to even give him an inch of space in those sort of areas. Whether he's using his head or can be able to control it and get himself in an area, he's absolutely deadly in front of goal. So that's something that Heidelberg can't afford to allow Oakleigh to do early in this game. So a fascinating start. As we said, we expect Oakleigh to have a lot more possession and Heidelberg to sit back a lot more. So if they're going to do that, though, they need to be on their A-game defensively in those sort of moments if they're going to allow Oakleigh to have more of the ball and sit back.
Looks as though the rain that was diving down in the lead-up to kick-off has just receded, so maybe a chance for the players to get a bit more control over the football, although Heidelberg are going to go full chaos ball here. A long throw missiled in by Josh Pinn, punched away by Nick Feely, the first involvement for him after surviving an injury scare. And Valentini takes the ball in his stride. Adrian Zara, the Heidelberg captain, doing his darndest to keep it away from the venomous Oakleigh attacker. And it's back with Valentini. Drives in a nice cross, but it's glanced clear by Fedor Hadzic. Still unconvincing from Lesiotis. And now it's Zara and Theodoropoulos saw a poor touch. The game being played largely in Oakleigh's attacking half early doors. Guest. 1-2 with Kubalay. Wasn't quite successful. This Heidelberg back four haven't got oodles of experience to call on. Look like they're going to be up against it this evening, Nick, if the early evidence is enough to go on. Is that what George Katsakis would have wanted? Would he have preferred to have less of the possession, hit on the break? I mean, this Burgers side are probably one of the best counter-attacking sides historically in the NPL Victoria that we've ever seen. Does it suit them to play this way and invite the pressure from Oakleigh?
Yes and no. I think it does from the sense if they can cause early turnovers and, try and sort of frustrate them. But as we said, they can't afford to allow for Oakleigh players to get free in those moments, because there has been moments where Fechner's gotten in good areas to cross the ball in. And, you've been able to see Valentini ghost clear at that back stick, and other players like Alex Salmon too. So it's something they definitely need to be on their A-game with. They need to be focused, because it can only take one moment of brilliance for Oakleigh, and we know that once one goes in, if they can pull Heidelberg out of their shape, get an early lead, that's when Heidelberg will probably be a little bit more vulnerable as well.
They are 10th in the league this season, Heidelberg, a long way short of their usual standards. NPL Victoria champions in years gone by. Dockerty Cup champions, of course, in 2017. Something that Oakleigh, as yet, of course looking to change that tonight, have ever been able to call themselves. But they've almost been able to separate the league and cup form. 24 goals across 24 rounds of NPL Victoria, but 17 in 5 in the cup. As it's sent in, kept alive by Shepherd. It's a real scramble in the middle. And diving down to get it clear that time was one of the players that our boundary rider Josh Parrish picked out as being key in this game in the pre-show, Brodie Boyce, Nick.
Yep. Hasn't missed a minute this season.
No,
he's every second of the season. Incredible.
Played with some serious composure and class. Hard to believe he and his central defensive partner in Anton Lenaric are just 21 years of age. Another long throw for the Burgers across the face of the box. Ali with the acrobatics, but it had a lack of sting en route to goal, even if I do appreciate the idea from Jamal Ali.
I mean, why not? It's the big stage. You may as well have a thing. It actually set up quite well for him. You look at it back on the replay, like it just sort of pinballed around, and then Ali was able to actually compose himself quite well and get good connection. But, you know, when it comes to those, you need to hit it with proper venom, and that's so difficult to do. So, really, the first warning shot there fired from Heidelberg. I mean, you know, only one good chance each for both teams.
Theodoropoulos has lost out to Brodie Boyce. Again, does such a good job to win a throw for his side that time around. Never looks flustered. Does Brodie Boyce. Here's Emlyn Wellsmore to take the throw. Another one of the new Cannons names this season who has not missed a step since joining his new side. The ladies sent in behind for Josh Pinn. The slickness of the surface, that's always going to be a difficult one, even if you are as fast as the high voltage Josh Pinn. The J Pin, as he's known, the traps at Heidelberg for his electric speed. Down goes Anthony Theodoropoulos in the middle.
It was Sean Ellis, I think.
Oh, it was Sean Ellis, in fact. Not a player that George Katsakis would want to lose early doors. I don't think it's too serious. As it goes up into the air, he got a bit of an arm through the back of the head. Whether or not it's enough to see him out of this game for a prolonged period, I'm not quite as sure. But look, Sean Ellis has done a lot of magic things in this competition. If anyone can earn himself a couple of extra seconds rest, I think Sean Ellis is right up there.
Yeah, I think so. I couldn't agree more. I mean, the fascinating thing, just going back to Oakleigh's defence, Lockie, you mentioned the likes of Boyce, etc., etc. When you really think about it, it's quite amazing how well this defensive unit has meshed, considering this is 4 new players who came in the off-season. I mean, this is a completely brand new defence compared to last year, when they've had Aaron Williams out with a season-ending injury. They've had Matthew Foschini missing. Jacob Eliopoulos is obviously on the bench today. Anthony Pantasopoulos left mid-season to sign for Western Sydney Wanderers. So they've had to kind of tinker things a little bit defensively, and obviously as well lost Oscar Dillon too. So it's quite remarkable how this whole brand-new defence has been so good this season, despite, you know, before this year never playing a minute together. And it's been quite remarkable how Chris Taylor's been able to make that happen.
Absolutely, it has. 2 central defenders, one of the best defences in the league, with a combined age of 42.
It's quite remarkable.
It's not often. Usually you get the sort of old head, talented young central defender dynamic. It's not often that you get just 2 talented youngsters.
And you couple that with all almost the rotating door of injuries they've had in goals this year. When you look at, you know, Luis Italiano started the season, they've had Lockie Hart, they've had Nick Feely, they have George Bitsios. I mean, this has been something that's kind of plagued Oakleigh for the last 2 seasons in terms of the rotating door of goalkeepers and the injury curse that's been happening at Jack Edwards Reserve. So, to their credit, they've done a really good job.
Really nice turn from Stefan Valentini. It's been a real handful early doors. Side-footed clear by Adrian Fedohajic. He's one of the 3 players for the Burgers that missed that 2-1 defeat to Moreland City through suspension and accumulation of yellow cards, but I'm sure that George Katsakis will be happy to have his defensive warrior in chief, back in action. Clark brings it down in the front third, but did so well to control it. And the pass was something else altogether. Nicolaides. Tick past the opening 10 minutes. Deflection is going to break kindly in favour of English defender Connor Hampson. One of the signings of the season from non-league side Curzon Ashton. Was the former club of his fellow Oakleigh teammate in Joe Guest, as Josh Pinn has shown a great turn of pace here to win the ball, and he wants to put it inside for Anthony Theodoropoulos. But first to the scene of the crime with the Oakleigh defence, and they were really caught out by the pace of Josh Pinn in that occasion, Nick.
Yeah, absolutely. And wait a second, I thought for a brief moment that maybe he was going to get in behind Ansel Minarich there. But I'll tell you what, he is electric. And the way that, you know, that if they can time those passes to perfection and almost play, you know, just go and get it, put it ahead of him and just back his pace in. There aren't many players or many defenders for that matter that are able to go one-on-one with him in just a straight sprint, essentially. And sometimes you've got to do that. In these sort of games, I mean, the pitch has taken a pelting pre-game with rain as well. And the ball's going to sit up, and it's going to allow for Pinn to get on the end of those passes a lot more. So we'll see if that becomes a little bit more of a tactic as the game wears on. If George Katsakis maybe can get a message out to his midfielders just to, you know, back in Pinn's pace and let him do the talking instead of, you know, sort of letting the ball do the talking and put it ahead of him in that sense.
And someone who's had a real good eye on the action so far in the last couple of minutes is our boundary rider, Josh Parrish. Josh, before this free kick, what are you seeing, what are you hearing on the sidelines?
Well, I can tell you that George Katsakis is fired up. He's prowling his technical area, he's shouting encouragement to his players, and he seems absolutely delighted with the way they've imposed themselves on this game.
In comes the set piece from Ellis. Fedarjic, the target at the back post. Josh, it was one of the big narratives pre-game, the different personalities on the technical areas for the two coaches, George Katsakis getting up and about. What about Chris Taylor? What can you tell us about his opening 13 minutes in this game?
Well, he's casting a watchful eye over proceedings, but hands are in the pockets, and I don't think he's said a word yet. So I think he saves his words for when they're really important. But, you know, I can tell you that Josh Pinn's long throws have really troubled Oakleigh defensively. I know we don't have Ruben Way playing for Heidelberg these days, but you could have fooled me for thinking that was Ruben out there, because Josh Pinn was getting some serious distance.
Indeed. Thank you for the update, Josh. We'll keep in touch with you over the course of the evening as Oakleigh look to build their first attack in a couple of minutes now. Heidelberg certainly have settled into this game. Hampson, early cross. Salmon was there, and now it's Guest who is denied the chance to fire on goal by a really good intervention from one of your favourites, Nick, Jamal Ali.
Yeah, very good defending there from Jamal Ali, getting across to deny Joe Guest in that moment. It's a great ball into the area. It's sat up well for him, but Jamal Ali read that really well just to get across at that last second. Really rate that mid-season signing for Heidelberg.
And now the corner is into a dangerous area once again. Heidelberg need to get this clear. Fechner strikes on the half volley, and Heidelberg will eventually buy themselves some time. They are struggling with dealing with those balls into the area. I know the wet weather footy, it does make it a little bit more difficult. And Oakleigh going to continue to drive them in. This time it's cleared with emphasis by Shepherd. It definitely feels, Nick, like Heidelberg have weathered that storm of the opening 5 minutes.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think they've been able to, you know, just settle a little bit as well and get themselves prepared for what they can expect from this Oakleigh team tonight. And they've done a really good job at just soaking in that early pressure and, you know, not getting caught out too much. So far, so good. As Josh said, George Katsakis is pleased with what he's seen. And I think if you're a Heidelberg fan as well, you'd be pleased with what you've seen so far, because what we saw, especially in the last meeting, Lockie, where, you know, Oakleigh were able to hit hard and hit early. So far, they've been able to weather the storm for 15 minutes. And I don't want that to come across disparaging to Heidelberg, saying, oh, you've just survived 15 minutes. But we saw that when the heads dropped with Heidelberg, we've seen this season when they concede early, that can be a problem.
I suspect this, though, may be their biggest test. Oakleigh's set-piece threat. That's a great delivery from Guest. Kept alive by Valentini. And Kubalay, well, it's through the legs of Kubalay. And Heidelberg are on the break. Adrian Zara has Josh Pinn to his right. And he has been a constant thorn in the side of this Oakleigh defence. Josh Pinn buys a yard. And Kubalay has done well after being megged to get back and cover. And Josh Pinn now has turned himself into a bit of a cul-de-sac. There's not a lot of yellow shirts providing the reinforcement. And Oakleigh eventually, well, they're going to get a bit of a cheapie on that goal kick, but I think we got a bit of a window into the game plan tonight, though, for George Katsakis' side. With that speed in behind, I mean, almost your best bet is to hit on the break.
Yeah, absolutely, and get the ball to Josh Pinn. It feels like he is the outlet right now, and he's the person who's looking the most dangerous in terms of making something happen. We haven't seen much of Allison Shepherd so far, but if they can get that silver service from Pinn, and again, you can see it right there, obviously the flag went up, but the first instinct was to try and get that ball quickly and play it fast. I think that's what they've got to do if they're going to try and break down this Oakleigh team. It has to be quick, it has to be electric, and when they win the ball back. And you can't let this team set up behind the ball, and you've got to use the best attributes of what you have in that front line.
Anton Mlinaric has been the man with the handful dealing with Josh Pinn. Heidelberg are growing in confidence. Zara, the captain. Shepherd wants to turn and go. And it's across for Ellis now. Right for the delivery. Stripped away by the Cannons. End-to-end football at Kingston Heath, the Dockerty Cup final. Delivering so far. Yet to provide an opening goal. It feels a matter of when, not if. And that's Clark now. Kept alive by Kubalay. The Burgers have got their defensive numbers deep here, but Guest is felled on the edge of the box. And this is a decent range for a side that have got the free kick abilities that Oakleigh do, and chiefly the man who's won the free kick in Joe Guest.
Yeah, well, it's a nice little bit of play here on this right-hand side. Kubalay just playing it inboard, then Joe Guest just caught very, very late. And, I mean, you can't even give him that sort of space on the edge of the area, just closing down a little bit too late. And it's worked out quite well here for Oakleigh, though. I mean, for Joe Guest, it's in shooting range. It's also in crossing range. Pick or choose.
What are you doing if you're Joe Guest? It's a decent range from goal, but the angle is tight.
He's a left footer. You're hitting this. It's the natural arc from this position. I think you've got to go for it. And also, it's perfect in that corner where the sort of Pierce Clark will be diving to.
Well, let's see what he does. Joe Guest drives it low. It wasn't the worst idea trying to pick out the bottom right corner. That probably would have been the most difficult area from which Pierce Clark could have produced a save that have been on target, but not that far away from Oakleigh's English maestro.
Yeah, love the idea from Joe Guest to go for that bottom corner, but you talk about difficulty for Pierce Clark to save. That's probably the most difficult shot to hit out of all those for Joe Guest to try and P-roll it at that bit, which was blocked by the wall. So, nonetheless, Heidelberg survive.
It's been an interesting year in the life of Heidelberg keeper Pierce Clark. Of course, this time last year, the 2022 Dockerty Cup final. He was a Dockerty Cup winner with the Bentley Greens against the Oakleigh. Spent the vast majority of the time since at A-League men's level in the keeping setup at Perth Glory, and is now back at the club where he did play a handful of games as a youngster. Work under George Katsakis once more. Ellis up the line for Nicolaides. Plenty of energy from him, but no cross. Ellis high into the penalty area. And over the top of Shepherd, Clark had to rake that one away because it was a little bit nervy. Murakami thought he could win the ball, but lost out to Valentini. That's a really good interception from Anthony Lesiotis. Another former A-League player. Guest was coming back from an offside position on that occasion. So I think it's all going to come to naught. Josh, I'm starting to hear a bit more of the coaching chatter, even through the commentary box window here at Kingston Heath. What's going on down on the touchline? Obviously, a few people are up in arms about the lack of a free kick there, and the fact that Joe Guest was coming back from an offside position.
Yes, Oakleigh apoplectic at that decision, but I can tell you a few moments earlier when Oakleigh had that free kick, George Katsakis was actually appealing for an Oakleigh corner afterwards. I think it might have been sarcastic, directed in Yanni Ziz's direction, but if not, a rare bit of sportsmanship.
A man of the theatre, George Katsakis. Thank you for that, Josh. Ali launches the ball up the line. Flicked on by an Oakleigh defender in the end. And Kubalay wraps his boot around the ball. So we get past the 20-minute mark. Oakleigh looking to lift the Dockerty Cup tonight for the first time in their history. It really is the one piece of silverware that's evaded them over the stretch. They did break the championship hoodoo, of course, last year, defeating Southland 5-0 in the grand final.
Yep.
We'll be hoping to do something similar this season. Sitting in third.
I would say similar conditions, but the rain has somewhat subsided from pre-game because it was feeling a little bit like that. It was feeling a bit like 2022 all over again.
Ooh, Alex Fechner has gone into the deck there. He's back up on his feet straight away, as you can see, which is a great relief. From an Oakleigh Cannons perspective, what have you made of Alex Fechner's first season in NPL Victoria? Since coming down from NPL Queensland, only 1 goal in the Cup, but 7 in the league.
I think it's an interesting one because he came down with, I think a lot of people, when they saw his resume and what he was able to do in Queensland, there was a lot of expectation that, Alex Fechner was going to come down and dominate the league. And I think he's actually been really good for them this season. I mean, it took him a bit of time to get going, but once he has, he's been a very, very serviceable player. To still score 7 goals this year is very, very good. I mean, also on top of that, he's in an attack that he's not relied upon to hit the net probably at the same amount that he had to over in Queensland. And, so I was just going to leave that for 2 seconds. I thought Chanel was going to pickpocket that one there. But, I mean, I think he's actually been okay. I don't think he's been, necessarily gold medalist, but I think he's been a very good signing for them nonetheless.
And it would be, I mean, I'm not a semi-professional NPL attacker, but if I put myself in the mind of one, it would be especially tough in this Oakleigh side where there is so many good attackers. There is so much competition for places because you look past the starting 11 and you have Wade Decker and Chris Lucas, obviously, both on the bench, two well-credentialed forwards in this league.
Don't forget, when Cam McGilp is in the team, Daniel Clark is also considered as an attacking player as well. Yeah. So this is a very, very stacked attack to break into, and he's always got that pressure and that competition to continue performing at quite a level. I still think he's been a really good signing for them. Still to score 7 goals this year, and he's a player that can really win a game for them. So, yeah, I think it's been a good deal all around, and also on top of it, it is difficult, making a move from Queensland and adjusting to NPL Victoria and everything like that. So, yeah, so far so good.
Good to see that grandstand in the background from this Pierce Clark goal kick. Pretty much full to the brim now. Friday night Dockerty Cup final. Slightly different to the status quo, but good to see it under lights.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying it. We haven't had too many games under lights at Kingston Heath just in general this year. I mean, Bentley have played a lot of their games on Saturday afternoon, so it's good to see football under lights here. A big game at Kingston Heath. I mean, it feels weird without having an Australia Cup fixture here at Kingston Heath. Usually Bentley are hosting a couple here.
Valentini, a really strong battle between he and Murakami. Really defending so deep at the moment. Kane Shepherd, the furthest man forward, and that is who the ball was at the feet of. Kane Shepherd, of course, alongside former Oakleigh player Joe Knowles, the reigning gold medalist in this league. That's knocked out of play by Aiden Federhajic, and you can see he's marshalling his troops. Certainly didn't leave it to chance what he thought of their positioning in the lead up to that run in behind. Boyce has stepped out of central defence to boost the numbers in attack for Oakleigh. I must say, Nick, they're having a hard time getting through this yellow wall at the moment.
Yeah, it's very organised. It's, a back five, essentially, and basically Josh Pint coming in as that extra wing back. It's very well played.
Great cross from Wellsmore. It's past the forehead of Salmon. But the second chance will fall to Alex Fechner. It's a great save from Clark. Down to his right, tipping it away. And by far the best chance of the cup final falls to Oakleigh. And they smell blood. Salmon nodding it down. Guest is clipped. And Yanni Zizas points to the penalty spot. And it's a red card.
Whoa.
Goodness gracious me. Well, Heidelberg, after such a competitive start to this game,
oh boy,
have been absolutely stunned. A penalty decision in favour of the Oakleigh Cannons after Joe Guest was clipped in the box, making a run through by Aiden Federhajic. And to add insult to injury from a Burgers perspective, their champion central defender, Aiden Federhajic, for a shove in the back, is receiving, or has received, a straight red from referee Jonas Zizas.
Well, this
this game has turned on its head in the blink of an eye, Nick.
Penalty's clear. I mean, no dispute in the penalty. I mean, it's harsh when it comes to the red card, but letter of the law, denying a goal-scoring opportunity is the last man. Oh, it's tough, especially because it's the first foul as well. I mean, it's a letter of the law kind of thing.
Triple punishment as well.
Yeah.
Nick, was it a legitimate footballing challenge? Well,
it's either beholder sort of stuff, isn't it? Is it not? I mean,
it's a big call, but Oakleigh, in their quest to claim their first Dockerty Cup, will not complain.
God, that's a sucker punch for Heidelberg.
Oh, and truly, I cannot wait to cross down to Josh Parrish on the boundary after this penalty, and it will be the man who won it, Joe Guest, who opened the scoring for the Cannons in the 2022 final, to take. It's Joe Guest. It's into the bottom left. The Cannons have the breakthrough at Kingston Heath, and there will be plenty to say about the decision that led up to it, but Joe Guest was unperturbed, slotting it into the bottom left, and a huge break for the Cannons. First blood in the final.
Yeah, beautiful penalty there from Joe Guest. Easy as you like. 1-0 there to Oakleigh. But, God, just going back to that decision there, Lockie, that's the big talking point, because we were talking probably about a minute before that just how well organised Heidelberg were, and Aiden Federhajic, how well he had set up his defensive unit and how good they looked in those moments. And then for that red card to come in, and watching this decision again, there's a shove in the back. Is there enough in it to suggest there's a red card? It's going to divide opinion. It's going to split opinion. It's tough, but nonetheless, Heidelberg have to continue. They have to keep playing. I mean, they can't afford to let this, they're down a goal, they're down a man, but they have to switch on. They have to get their head screwed on in these moments, because we've seen in the past, Lockie, especially in these two games, the two previous games they've played each other, this is now when Oakleigh especially put the foot down. And I know Heidelberg are down, they're going to have to chase the game, but they can't afford to drop their heads right now.
If there is a consolation for the Burgers, they do sometimes do their best work when the symptoms are chaotic, and I'm gathering that there was certainly a lot of chaos on the touchline in the lead-up to that penalty. Josh, George Katsakis was up and about pre-penalty. Where is he at now? Take us through it.
Well, the discussions with Ross Clark have only just ceased. He was remonstrating along with Savas Pasikas for some time there. I don't think they had any real objection to the penalty call, but once the red card came out, all bets were off and tempers were flaring, to say the least. From my position, it did look like a push. As for a red card, it's up to the referee's interpretation. But after all of those protests has been dealt with, he went straight over to Kane Shepherd to give out the instructions to the team of how to shape up. And it looks like Anthony Theodoropoulos is going to move from attacking midfield into central defence, which is a role that he's had to deputise in this season, with Heidelberg being quite short of bodies at the back.
Thank you for that, Josh. I'm sure we'll have to keep checking in with you over the course of this game, if only for Cat's Watch and purely nothing else, because he has every reason to be up and about. A very big decision in the cup final that has put Heidelberg on the back foot where the goals are concerned and also where the numbers are concerned. The second goal for Oakleigh would put them in a commanding position.
Well, just having a look at their bench today, they do have Mohamed Aidara, Owen Ashton, Dominic Fala and Bilal Habib, and of course Brendan White as well. But you would think if there's that sort of defensive option,
All in
maybe
from Wellsmore Valentini. Sorry to cut you off, Nick, but anytime Emlyn Wellsmore is looking to cross into the box. And Oakleigh have still got their tails up, driving towards goal. It's a double deflection, and it's panic stations for the Burgers. Wellsmore back on the right-hand side. Returns the favour to Kublai, and there is Shinsuke Murakami. His 15 league games to his name this season, throwing his body around. Fechner. Clipped by Ali, and Oakleigh will get another free kick within close range of goal.
You do think, I mean, right now we spoke about seizing possession and Heidelberg being up against it, having to face, you know, wave after wave of Oakleigh attack. These next 15 minutes are going to be massive. Just almost survive these 15 minutes and try and keep it to a one-goal scoreline, because Oakleigh right now, it looks like, to use a cliche, it's a matter of when, not if, that second goal is coming, because they've really got their tails up right now.
And they double their money from this Joe Guest delivery. Flipped into the mixer. It was a shot direct, but the Burgers are battening down the hatches at the moment. It's usually the kind of approach that you see a team who are 1-0 up with 10 men in a final go for. But it's an Oakleigh onslaught at the moment. Clark. Valentini. He loves these situations, but he's had a really tight battle with Shinsuke Murakami so far. Valentini drives it into the box, chested down for Joe Guest, but the offside flag was up, and Joe Guest would have scored a simply sensational goal. It counts for naught in the end, but he is always a showman, Joe Guest.
The Guest salmon.
It might well have been salmon.
A salmon. That was, oh my goodness! Look at this on the just our small screen now, picture in picture. That is incredible.
Ellis has kept this ball alive for the Burgers, and it's a great cutback onto the right foot. Can they strike against the flow? It's driven away at the first time of asking by the Cannons' defence. The Burgers are going to need to make those crosses into the box count in this game. They have found goals hard to come by in the league this season. They're going to need to pull out all the stops in this game.
Yeah.
And they will turn to, well, a tried and tested method of chance creation so far in this game.
Well, this might be just literally their best avenue, these sort of moments.
Not Max Mickler of South Melbourne, it's Josh Pinn, and it's into the penalty spot, and the header is well clear in the end. It was Jamal Ali who rose into the night sky at Kingston Heath to try and pull Heidelberg level. And if you are just joining us, there's a 0-0 ball game after 25 minutes, and then a moment exploded this game into life. A penalty given in favour of Oakleigh, and a red card dished out to Heidelberg's Aiden Federhajic. It has Heidelberg down a goal, courtesy of a converted penalty from Joe Guest, and down to 10 men. Adrian Zara, the captain. He is going to be so important in this game now as a leader as much as a player. Lesiotis. Towards the final 10 minutes, stoppage time notwithstanding of this first half. One man who has been probably Heidelberg's best in the cup, Nick, hasn't been much cited in this game so far. Kane Shepherd, obviously some of that's probably to do with the game state, but what can they do with Kane Shepherd to get him more involved in this game? Because he's been so pivotal to this cup run, they need him if they're going to get anything out of the final.
It's hard now because they're down a player and they've had to shuffle the deck and move Theodoropoulos further back, and
ooh, double punch away from Clark. It wasn't the most convincing command of a penalty area that you've ever seen, was it?
No, not at all. But just going back to that point, it's going to be tough for Shepherd. He's going to have to come in and play really, really deep. And we've seen him do that a lot during his time at Heidelberg, having to come in and, you know, receive the ball in sort of midfield areas and get himself involved in earlier phases of possession. But, I mean, any situation, any striker always finds these situations when your team's down a player and you're almost just a lone figure up top and just hoping for any sort of counter-attack, any sort of crumbs that you can possibly get.
Joe Guest has been everywhere so far in this half. That corner is in low, and in truth, it's a poor first touch from Alex Salmon, and a goal kick for Heidelberg's number 25, Pierce Clark. Josh Parrish, you've had a pretty good view of the sights and sounds available to Kane Shepherd so far in this game. He's cut a pretty isolated figure. His biggest job so far has been to receive the instructions from George Katsakis after the Burgers went down to 10. What have you made of his performance so far? How can they get him more involved, Heidelberg?
Well, I will say, even if he hasn't received much of the ball, he's definitely been a leader out there. You can always hear him talking and dishing out instructions to the rest of the team and encouragement. He's almost a second captain out there, so he's been contributing in that regard. But in terms of Heidelberg, I think it's going to be a challenge now for Sean Ellis to get through the amount of running he has to get through in a defensive sense, given that they are now down to 10. He's been struggling to track back a little bit. He had that early knock where he was holding his head.
Early ball from Guess, driven in low by Fechner. Sorry to jump on your toes, Josh. But Oakleigh attacking with real venom from the corner. It'll be very interesting to see what George Katsakis does with his bench options in this game. They are fighting against the weight of numbers in head-to-head meetings, of course. We did expect Oakleigh to control this game, having beaten the Burgers 5-1 and 5-0 in their home and away meetings, respectively. But Heidelberg were absolutely right up to their neck in this game, pre a red card.
Absolutely they were, and they actually were threatening in some key moments. They looked good on the counter-attack, and for that one moment, you know, that's shifted this game in Oakleigh's favour, and not just on the scoreline, but just with the advantage and everything like that. It's really tough, and I mean, it's going to be very interesting to see how Heidelberg respond from here, because yes, it's still 1-0, and you know, as much as they are down a player, they're still right in this game. It might seem as if Oakleigh are all over them right now, but all it takes in these cupfuls, Lockie, it comes down to moments. It comes down to one little spill, one little chance. So as long as Heidelberg can keep this game tight and keep it within an arm's length, they're well and truly in this contest and could still potentially, it's going to be tough, but maybe cause a little bit of a late stir and a bit of a comeback.
If there is a silver lining for the Burgers, they have gone down to 10 twice in the cup competition already, not including the final, and gone on to win both of those games. They were 1-0 up at halftime, but down a man in the semi-final against Goulburn Valley, and won 5-0 in the end. Valentini can't clear the brick wall that is Jamal Ali. What an inspired mid-season signing he's been from Altona Magic, where he wasn't playing. I understand there was a bit of a falling out potentially between he and the bigwigs at Altona, but their loss is well and truly been George Katsakis' gain. It's taken to his new surrounds like a duck to water, Nicholas.
That's one way to put it.
How would you put it then? Tell me.
Can't, to be honest right now, mate, because you hit me with the best one. I probably can't match it. Anything else that I decide to go with right now is going to fall flat, so best just to keep my silence.
I would have taken Ali play good as just a minimum effort attempt, but anyway, great to have you on special comments, Nick.
Yes, absolutely. Well, you're still on my lines, mate. You're reading from my script.
Well, this is definitely not the script that Heidelberg would have expected inside the opening half. They might have expected to be a goal down, but potentially not a man down, and there might be more pain here. It's Fechner breaking on to the left boot, and he had Valentini as the short passing option, decided not to go with him. Clark, great scrap. Valentini was onside, and his eventual effort was just past the face of goal, but the reason this is being pulled back is because Daniel Clark, I believe, has been booked for simulation. Unless it was a follow-up in the aftermath of that coming together. Yannis Zizis has reached to his pocket for the second time in this first half.
Well, I'll have to see it again, because, I mean, I don't know, was there potentially a bad bump, a stamp or something? I don't know. I mean, must have missed that one. But, yeah.
If it was simulation, the sell was good. I was certainly fooled.
Let's have a look again. Oh, not quite sure what happened there. It was just a sea of legs. He went to ground, so nonetheless, he's booked, so he's going to have to tread with caution for the remainder of the game.
Kubalay across for Alex Fechner. So a few good chances to score in this game. Won't add to the tally with that attempted foray. It's been urged by Yanni Zizas to get up, but that one, well, if Daniel Clark's suspected dive before was a good sell, that one was not quite as well disguised from Heidelberg youngster Dion Nicolaides.
Again, a really dangerous position here to give away a free kick, and on Joe Guest's natural side, the left in-swinging arc. We know how dangerous he can be from these set pieces. I think just gathering of who's come forward for this one, Lockie, I think we know where this one is going. It's going right in the mixer.
I think Oakleigh would sacrifice a lot to get a second goal going into the second half of this game. If Heidelberg can keep it to 1, they're in with a chance, but it's proving a tough, easier said than done. As Joe Guest, a wicked curl on the delivery, but Pierce Clark, well, he had a slightly hairy moment clearing one away from his box earlier, but that was comfortably dealt with. Josh's Daniel Clark, or rather it's Connor Hampson, I think, who's down on the deck, is rolling around and will probably need some treatment. Has there been any murmurs in the technical areas of a potential halftime sub for either side?
Well, firstly, I can clear up that earlier yellow card. It was for studs showing after he lost the ball, so it wasn't for simulation. But it doesn't look like Heidelberg are going to their bench anytime soon. It looks like George Katsakis is going to try and make it happen with the 10 players he's got out there at the moment. But I do look at Sean Ellis, and he looks to be struggling a little bit physically. He's the sort of player who, you want to be able to release him for the attacking phase and not ask him to do too much defensive work, especially at this point in his career. And he's having to do doggies all the way down that right-hand touchline. So maybe they could tweak the formation slightly to try and track that overlapping fullback from Oakleigh, because that seems to be the point where it's maybe breaking down for the 10 men of Heidelberg. Do
you take Ellis off in that? I mean, let's play a game that you probably haven't played too many times, Josh. You are George Katsakis. Do you take Sean Ellis off, or do you move him into a position where he has to do less running and you make someone else a sacrificial lamb so you can get those legs in without losing the quality of Sean Ellis?
I think I probably move Zara out to the right flank, and I leave Sean Ellis as almost a number 10 with Leslie Otis covering for him in behind. But it's a tough conundrum with 10 players. There's only so many options, and you want to keep them on the park for the big moments, maybe when they're chasing it at the end of the game.
Especially when there are potential free kicks to be had late in this game. We know he has form when it comes to doing that against the Oakleigh Cannons, striking in the last minute to send it to penalties of extra time in that elimination final, a 3-3 draw back in 2022. Of course, it all ended up pretty good for the Oakleigh Cannons in the end, but Ellis is a man who can create magic without much in the way of effort.
Yeah, absolutely. Something out of nothing.
But I'm going to ask the same question in a moment that I did to Josh just earlier. As Oakleigh look to double their money and build another attack. It's a deflected cross, a corner for the Cannons. This is their most potent phase of play where goal scoring is concerned. Of 55 all up this season, 15 of them have come from corners, 6 more than the next nearest in NPL Victoria. This is their bread and butter, and it's sent in well, only as far as Alex Fechner on the edge of the box, and Shepherd will get some breathing room for the Burgers. As we meander our way towards first half stoppage time. Look, I think in context, Nick, if you told George Katsakis, well, you'll be down to 10 after the first half, but you'll only be down by a goal at halftime, he'd probably take it, given what's transpired.
But yes and no. Yes and no. 1-0, yeah, not the numerical.
I mean, in the
disadvantage.
context of the red card, you would take only being down.
Yeah. I guess so. Still 3 minutes of added time.
Would you rather be down 2-0?
No, but there's still time. It could be like that because there's 3 minutes of added time. There's still plenty of time out here.
This is true. Ross
So
Clark.
gotta be careful.
Added healthy few minutes of first half stoppage. Heidelberg will get a deep free kick as well. Not that you'd know it from the way that Adrian Zara is currently remonstrating with Yanni Zizis. Adrian Zara, part of the furniture pretty much at Heidelberg United. Former A-League player with Perth Glory and then Melbourne Heart. He was one of the two players still here at the Burgers from their Dockerty Cup winning side in 2017 alongside Sean Ellis. And here he is on the ball, Adrian Zara. Did well to find clean passage to Lesiotis. Flipped in behind, brought down by Ellen. Side position. Does seem to be feeling the effects of the Ks that he's put in this first half.
Nice drop punt there from Jamal Ali.
Straight over the big sticks.
Yeah.
Theodore Ops, who, as a result of Aiden Fedahajic's red card, has had to slot into central defence out of attacking midfield. He really is one of those players that George Katsakis will ask to do anything, and more often than not, Anthony Theodoropoulos will say yes. Oh, that's a missed pass by Anton Milinaric, and Ellis tried to slip it in behind for Kane Shepherd. That's a costly turnover for both sides in that situation. Ellis will assess his options once more. In behind for Josh Pinn. Nodded away by the Oakleigh defence, and then, well, that stayed in play from Emlyn Wellsmore's clearance. Studs through the back of Anthony Theodoropoulos. Alex Salmon, you could make the case that the two strikers for both of these sides have probably been the two quietest players.
Yeah, no, I agree. Alex Salmon has been very quiet in this game, bar that incredible goal when play stopped. But yeah, both strikers haven't really been as involved, and they were probably two of the players before the game. If you're going to pick to have a massive say in how things would go, they would be the two guys that you would hedge your bets on.
Great challenge from Jamal Ali, muscling his way through the Oakleigh defence. Like they weren't there, but eventually he runs out of real estate, and that brings us to a close in the opening 45. Oakleigh on course to lift the Dockerty Cup for the first time in their history, courtesy of a penalty from Joe Guest. It was a game that was hotly contested inside the opening 25 minutes before the major flashpoint of this game. A penalty awarded by Yanni Zizis, a red card shown to Aiden Fedahajic, and Joe Guest, the man who won the penalty, stepped up to take it, slotted it into the bottom left past Pierce Clark to create this scoreline that we're currently taking into the sheds. A lot to dissect from that first half, Nick. That first half, Nick.
Yes. Quite tight, quite tense. Both teams were able to keep it quiet. I mean, Heidelberg were very well organised defensively. You know, frustrating Oakleigh. They were not allowing, I guess, the Heidelberg players or the Oakleigh players to have as much freedom. Then just that one moment there. And we'll be debating it for quite some time, whether it was or it wasn't a red card. It was a clear penalty, but whether it was an offence worthy of being dismissed, the beholder stuff, it comes down to the referees, the decision at the end of the day. But I'm sure the Heidelberg players and also George Katsakis would be very disappointed about it, as Josh Parrish told us. So, nonetheless, though, it's 1-0, and this game is still well and truly alive, even though Heidelberg are down a player.
How I would love to be a fly on the wall for George Katsakis' half-time team talk. We'll speak to their charges now, Chris Taylor and George Katsakis, to amp up a massive second 45. This game is still up for grabs. And stick with us through the halftime interval, because we will be having a halftime show. We're going to go do our best Usain Bolt impression, make it down to the touchline to join Josh Parrish for the halftime show. We'll see you shortly.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Kingston Heath, where the halftime score is Oakleigh Cannons 1, Heidelberg United 0 in the 2023 Dockerty Cup final. My name is Josh Parrish. I've got Nick Dabano and Lockie Flanagan here with me. We'll start with the big talking point at halftime, which is the red card for Aiden Fetahajic, the penalty decision that is the difference in this game, Nick.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was a flashpoint moment. Lockie and I, about 60 seconds beforehand, were waxing lyrical about how well organised Heidelberg were looking defensively. Now, Aiden Fetahajic was a key to organising all of that. And just in that one moment there, a shove in the back. I think it was a penalty, I will say. It was a shove in the back. Red card, though, it's tough. It's either beholder sort of stuff there. I mean, it's going to split decisions. It's going to be split opinions, I think, for a very, very long time. But at the end of the day, the decision's been made, and they've got to keep playing for the next 45.
Well, the decision is, Lockie, that it wasn't a footballing challenge. It wasn't a legitimate attempt to defend. It was just intentionally pushed Joe Guest over. Is that how you saw it?
I think from having watched that on replay, I can see that perspective, certainly. I think it's, Aiden Fetahajic is probably trying to make a shoulder-to-shoulder challenge, but you can see on the replay that he was sort of second best, and where that body barge is coming from is from behind. But it is a very tight call. I'm glad my name isn't Yanni's Ears. I'm glad I'm not a referee and I didn't have to make that decision, because it would have been a tough call for any referee to have to make. And Joe Guest was unperturbed, stepped up to the spot, wasn't fazed by all of the thoughts and feelings from the touchline about the penalty. He converted it with ease into the bottom left, and you expect nothing less from him.
That's what Joe Guest does. Where does this leave Heidelberg, Nick? How do you think they responded to the red card? How do you think they adjusted?
Well, for about 5 minutes afterwards, I was a little bit worried. Not going to lie, I was a little bit worried. I thought, Oakleigh are going to really start to put their foot down. But to be honest, to Heidelberg's credit, they actually settled quite well. I mean, you were talking about on the touchline, Kane Shepherd barking instructions, telling players to get back and set up defensively. I mean, they moved Anthony Theodoropoulos into centre-back. I thought he was quite good. Oakleigh had a couple of chances, but nothing really that made you worry too much that they were actually going to score. As far as it's 1-0, you may be down a player. It doesn't really matter. It's still 1-0. The game is still well and truly alive. I mean, it can change very quickly if Oakleigh score quickly, but the fact it's still 1-0, the fact that Heidelberg have been in this situation before, in this cup run where they've been down a player, been able to get results, I mean, they have to go in with some sort of confidence and belief that, we can still get something from this game, because they can easily send this game to extra time, and you get it level. You can defend for your lives, you can make it down and dirty, and you can potentially get that game to penalties, and it's anyone's game after that.
It's exactly what we were talking about during the game. If there is a consolation for Heidelberg at halftime, it is that they are only 1-0 down, but also that they've gone down to 10 twice in the run to this final. They've obviously won both games. You have to get to the big dance, but crucially in the last one, they were 1-0 up at halftime against Goulburn Valley in the semi-final. Adrian Zara, their captain, was sent off, and it actually was the bedrock for a rousing second-half performance where they ended up putting 4 on the board and emphatically sealing their place in this final. So they are a team that do thrive when the atmosphere, the emotions are running high, and if this is a ripper of a team talk, as I expect will be delivered and probably being delivered right now by George Katsakis, they will be up for this second half well and truly. It doesn't matter that it's 10v11 to them.
Use the perceived slight as motivational fuel. That's like entry number 1 in the George Katsakis coaching textbook. This is what he does. Let's talk about the game from an Oakleigh perspective. You guys mentioned on the call Alex Salmon quite quiet, but they did have a lot of good stuff running through midfield, and I thought made a lot of headway down the wings.
Yeah, absolutely. Alex Fechner was really, really good, I thought, that first half. I thought him and also the link-up play on that right-hand side was fantastic. I thought Steph Valentini got himself in some great areas, but always starts through Joe Guest. I mean, he's just pulling the strings. He gets himself in good areas. He's such a smart footballer. And when you've got Daniel Clark making those runs from deep as well, almost offering as a second 10 at times, and Oliver Kublai can just do his thing defensively, it's very, very hard to beat. And so far, so good for them. It means Alex Salmon hasn't had to nearly do as much. I mean, he's got a very tough task going up against Jamal Ali, and Jamal Ali, I think, has been sensational for Heidelberg today. But so far, so good for Oakleigh. I mean, it's all humming for them. And, from an attacking sense, if your striker's having a quiet game but you're still winning and everyone else is doing their job, then I think that Chris Taylor won't be complaining too much.
And the Of course, but he came up with that spectacular finish.
Unbelievable goal.
After the whistle had gone, so we know if the chance falls to him, Alex Salmon is in the mood. From a Heidelberg perspective, Lockie, how do they get back into this game? Because they do have to score to send this to extra time. A goal's got to come from somewhere. They're going to be defending for most of this second half. Where do you think they can make headway?
It was a point you raised on the boundary, Josh. I think they need an extra injection of zip, of energy into the front line. Obviously, some of their best chances have come through just the sheer pace in behind of Josh Pinn. And the counter-attacking chances that they've fed off in this game so far are only going to become more crucial for them as they have less of the ball, as they have a man less. So they need to get more of those runners into the side. Make it so that, Sean Ellis doesn't have to do all that gut running. He can get into a different position to make magic happen and bring on the Energizer Bunny, Owen Ashton. That's what they call him at the Burgers. They don't call him that for no reason. He can bring the spark off the bench. He would be my pick to come on at halftime.
Can I throw a second name in there as well?
Please.
Bilal Habib. I think you bring Owen Ashton and Bilal Habib on, you get that fresh legs on, you talk about speed, the two of them running at tired bodies late in this game. If you're going to have to play direct, you're going to have to play long balls, you're going to have to hope to get that ball knocked down to speed in that attack, they're going to be key. And I think, as you mentioned, Owen Ashton, Lockie, he's a player who can deliver something out of nothing. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what George Katsakis does, because he has to throw the kitchen sink at it. Eventually he's going to have to go for it, because what have they got to lose? I mean, it's a cup final. It's not as if they're losing points on the board. Best case scenario, they send this game to extra time. Even better case scenario, they win the game for their sake.
Well, can I throw one more name into the mix? An unlikely one. Jamal Ali winning the ball and starting the counter-attack himself.
He just figured, well, you know what, I'm just going to do it myself at some points. And it was great to watch. I reckon he's going to pull something out of his hat. He's an amazing player to watch.
I saw him actually look up at his available forward options, openly shrug as he was still in possession being challenged, and just dribble past two players. So that's the kind of, if you're going to get it done, you've got to do it yourself sometimes. That's the spirit they need.
It's the Bilbo Baggins approach. Yeah. I'm going on an adventure.
Yeah, literally just say, Anthony Alessio, just get back, son. I'm taking this for myself. So it'd be fascinating to see how Heidelberg chase this game.
How do you think Oakleigh manage it, though, Lockie? Because they've got options on their bench. Chris Taylor is an old-school coach. He doesn't like to make too many substitutions, especially when things are going well. Do you think they'll need fresh legs, and if so, when?
If I were Chris Taylor, I know this is asking him to throw his textbook, his scriptures out the window, but I would be really thoroughly analysing this first 10 to 15 minutes. How involved is Alex Salmon getting? How many chances is he creating? What is he making of the chances that fall to him? And if not, you have a man who is called in this competition Killer Chris Lucas because of his goal-scoring efforts, not only for the Cannons but here at Kingston Heath. I would be thinking about an attacking sub if Alex Salmon doesn't fire sooner rather than later.
Oh, fellas, I'll let you get back to the commentary booth. Heidelberg are out for the second half, where it's coming up right away, so stay tuned. It's the 2023 Dockerty Cup final. The halftime score, Oakleigh Cannons 1, Heidelberg United 0.
Welcome back to Kingston Heath Soccer Complex, the second half of the 2023 Dockerty Cup final. Ready and waiting, and if you've missed any of the opening 45, it is Heidelberg United with it all to do if they want to capture their second Dockerty Cup in their history, their first since 2017, because they have a turnaround job on their hands. They are 1-0 down and a man down it all happened, the big flashpoint. In the same moment, a penalty for Oakleigh Cannons, a red card for Aiden Federhajic for that said penalty, dispatched by Joe Guest, has the sides separated as they are heading into the break. Obviously, the Burgers were up against it, but they are growing back into this game despite having one less with which to use in the second 45. They've weathered a storm, and the question is, can they come back, or will it finally be Oakleigh Cannons' date with Dockerty Cup destiny? We'll find out in the second 45. Thanks for joining us. Wherever you're tuning in from, it's the same broadcast team as it was in the first 45. Lockie Flanagan and Nick Dabano. In Ruth, Josh Parrish will be providing updates from the boundary. But Nick, as you're the closest to me, I'll welcome you back in for the second 45. It is, look, the odds are against Heidelberg, but they have been a team historically over the stretch who have worked against the face of immeasurable odds in the past. Can you see them doing it in this game?
Well, it's going to be tough, but I mean, as we spoke about at half-time, it's 1-0. They're well and truly in this game. They have players they can bring on to provide a little bit of energy, and they've got winners on the pitch that, you know, have been able to do some incredible things before. They've got players like Kane Shepherd and Sean Ellis, proven winners. And players like Owen Ashton and Bilal Habib, we'll leave it for just a sec.
Trouble here for the Burgers. It's Joe Guest! It's wide. A careless moment in the Heidelberg defence. And Joe Guest is not the man you want to be giving the ball away to. It was Anthony Lesiotis with just a poor first touch. And Joe Guest tried to wrap his left boot around the ball, but in the end the effort was wide, and Heidelberg have survived a scare inside the opening 10 or 2 minutes of this second 45.
My whole preamble almost went out the window there about them being a goal down and right in it. I felt like just almost had a bit of humble pie come and smack bang in my face right there, but in the end, I mean, it's just gone narrowly wide, but just a little bit lazy there from Anthony Lesiotis, just a lapse in concentration. And you know what? I mean, he's very, very lucky there that Joe Guest sprayed that one wide, because he's that one player you do not want to give any sort of space in those sort of areas outside the box.
You talk about your life flashing before your eyes. I'm sure George Katsakis may well have on the touchline too. And there might be more pain in the offing here for the Burgers. It's Guest back onto the left boot, but couldn't get past Shunsuke Murakami. 22-year-old, one of the young heads in the Burgers lineup. His first season in the yellow and black. It's coming across from Japan. Kubale. Well, it wasn't the worst cross. The problem was there was no one there to meet it.
Yeah.
It happens. Ali Kubale, one of the premier midfielders in the competition for yours, Nick?
I think he's, like, in my view, probably
top 10, top 5?
I think he's top 5. I think he's one of the most underrated players in the entire league. I think he's a sensational player. I think, you know, I think if we're to make bold predictions for the All-Star game in a few weeks' time, I'd be having Oli Kubale as one of the first names on the team sheet. He's been great this season and has been for quite some time.
In case you're not familiar with what my co-commentator Nick Dabano is referring to, NPL Victoria, or Football Victoria, have announced that an NPL Victoria All-Star side will take on an NPL Queensland All-Stars side at the end of the season at the home of the Matildas in Bundoora. That is sure to be an absolute cracker. What a way to see out 2023's footballing calendar. Zara picks up the pieces in the midfield for the Burgers. Couldn't find clean passage, and Gianni Jesus is going to bring play to a stop. It's another Oakleigh free kick. And we might just cross down to Josh Parrish on the touchline just to give us a bit of the temperature on the sideline, because we surely would have been in for some big halftime team talks, and that would have translated out onto the pitch in the second half.
Well, I think it was telling, gentlemen, that Heidelberg were out so early. I think George Katsakis would have lit a fire underneath them, and they're certainly looking determined, particularly Adrian Zara in midfield, who's very uncompromising those 50-50 challenges, even more so than usual. So they're starting to put together some decent passages of play, but it's going to be Heidelberg fighting spirit that carries them over the line if they can get back into this game.
And interestingly, we talked about it in the halftime show. No subs made by either side. Thank you I'm sure you'll keep us updated on them, Josh, over the course of the game. But for the moment, it's with the players that started the game. Oh, and Josh Pinn nearly got the beating of Brodie Boyce that time around, but instead he's going to draw the ire of Yanni Zizis. And is he headed for a yellow ticket? Kane Shepherd might be talking his way into one. He's sent off the board. The one bit of form that Heidelberg have got at their side, you can see it's actually Connor Hampson on our replay, who was not exactly sparing his thoughts to Yanni Zizis. And Josh Pinn was definitely in behind. I have to say, I didn't seem like it was a shoulder-to-shoulder challenge.
Just seemed 50-50.
That one was cut and dry.
That's a foul. But yeah, I thought that was a 50-50 challenge, and I think that Brodie Boyce might have just been off balance in that moment. I think that, just by natural sort of...
Early cross from Wellsmore is, well, frankly, overcooked.
I was going to say, it's just natural physics that when you're running and someone knocks you, your centre of gravity is all over the place. So apologies there for the physics lesson, but basically, that's just basic sports science. So, in the end there, it might have been a little bit harsh against Josh Pinn.
Hasn't quite recaptured. Right, you could probably say this about Heidelberg at large this season. The heights of 2022. He did only finish in 6th, but Josh Pinn had a really solid season, as did the man that he was trying to find with that flicked-on header in Kane Shepherd. Scored 15 goals in 2022 in the league for this season, but 7 in the Cup. He's scored in every single game in the lead up to this final. How they would love for him to extend that streak. The Burgers nearly caught napping in defence. Hustle from Dion Nicolaides. And at the end of it all, he becomes the second player to head into the book. Plenty of Burger faithful off in the background of this free kick. Yanni Zizis has certainly had his work cut out for him so far in this game.
I was just going to say, that long ball strategy that Heidelberg are going for from the goal kick, I know it's just basic Route 1 football, but they might be onto something here, because it just for a second that Oakleigh defence was scampering back, and it looked like that potentially Kane Shepherd could have got him behind. So maybe if the roles were reversed, might have been something that, that they could have gotten him behind and created a chance, but certainly something to keep an eye on.
Great pick up of possession high up the field. The Cannons, their side in Victoria, that high press, one back possession more times on average per game than any other team. Hampson measures his delivery. It flashes across the face of the box, and Guest has a swing at it on the half volley. It couldn't get through the sea of legs in yellow and black. Oakleigh just taking their time to get a vice grip on this game. Only a second goal would guarantee it, and they won't find it with a delivery like that. Alex Salmon, who has been a bit of a quiet figure by his own lofty standards so far in this game. You can't exactly blame him for being quiet from that attack, because the cross was nowhere near him. How big of a job does Pierce Clark have in this second half, Nick?
I mean, he's got to marshal things. He's got to be the voice at the back at least, trying to, keep things sturdy for the back line. But also, I think just in these moments, actually with his goal kicks, he's got to be accurate. Because look what's happening here.
Flicked over the top by Ellis to Josh Pinn, but Mark Tito raises the offside flag, and Josh Pinn, I think, just keeps his words to himself there, because he knows that he's on the cusp potentially of a yellow card.
See what I mean? If it's Clark, if it's Ali, or if it's Theodoropoulos, whoever it is in that back line, the long ball is going to be their best route to getting in behind this Oakleigh defence. So that's happened now twice in their last 2 goal kicks. They've looked dangerous. So if this 10-man Heidelberg team is able to break down Oakleigh, they're going to have to be direct, and it's going to be coming down to playing those long balls that have to be accurate as well. And in these sort of conditions, the ball's going to sit up as well. So we'll see how that one plays out.
Pinn couldn't quite connect with Kane Shepherd, who's directing the traffic. It's Shinsuke Murakami who stepped out to join the attack, and now Valentini is going to look to exploit the space left in behind. Of course, these two teams, just look at Valentini, seem to be clutching their hamstring there. We'll keep an eye on that for the moment. Guest. There's his pocket picked by Anthony Lesiotis. What a brilliant job that was.
Very well played.
From the Heidelberg defensive midfielder. Still only 23 years of age is Anthony Lesiotis. The word around Olympic Village is that he's been a lot of people's favourite player this season.
I think he's been good. I think he's been quite good this season. I mean, it's easy to forget that, you know, he was on the books of Melbourne City twice, Melbourne Victory, Western Sydney Wanderers. I mean, there is a player there.
Certainly, George Katsakis can see the vision of a quality player in Anthony Lesiotis. He's delivering so far. He's got a very big task trying to limit the, well, it seems to be ever-growing influence of Joe Guest in this game. Is he the clubhouse leader for gold medal this season? I mean, 5 goals, 15 assists in the league is some tally.
Yeah, I think so. We'll leave it for just a sec, though.
Hampson couldn't get it past Jamal Ali.
I think so. I think probably one of the other players that I would throw in there is Jonas Markovsky.
Very good shout. Valentini picks up the 1-2, sights of goal. Stefan Valentini straight into the body in the end of Piers Clark. And if his job in the second half is just to do more of that, I think he'll be a very happy man.
I see, before, you know, any questions are asked, where are the Avondale players and even South Melbourne players, especially for Avondale? I think it's just going to be a case of so many players taking votes off each other. There's so many players you can throw up there.
It's a champion team rather than a team of champions.
And even with South, I think South are going to have a lot of players up there in abouts too, so it's tough to like sort of pinpoint who it could be if it was someone from Avondale or South. I really like Christian Trocheski this season. I've liked Stefan Zini. You know, there's a lot of good players in and around that sort of bracket that will be competing when we get to gold medal night and we see, you know, who is, if we get to round 20 and there's a few players that are in the mix.
Approaching 30 minutes left to play of regulation. You can see Heidelberg just slowly starting to commute a few numbers forward, because not only do they need to keep the Cannons at bay, but they need a goal. And it's going to be a free kick right on halfway, taken quickly by the Cannons. Joe Guest threading the needle for Alex Salmon, who is in behind. It's Alex Salmon clattered across the back of, and it's another penalty for the Oakleigh Cannons. Piers Clark is in disbelief. A brilliant pass across the face of the Heidelberg backline by Joe Guest to pick out Alex Salmon, who was well and truly in behind. And I think it was Jamal Arlenik in the aftermath of the free kick who might have just cut across the back of Alex Salmon there. Yep. It's not a dissimilar incident to the first half moment that saw Enfer Hajic sent off and concede the penalty.
Well, everyone missed it. I mean, it was a free kick taken quickly. It was masterful because Heidelberg had thrown so many numbers forward. And, I mean, Ali almost had to make the challenge because Salmon was bearing down on goal. And I think in the end, yeah, not many arguments with that penalty decision, but another blow here for Heidelberg. And it all comes down to Piers Clark. See if he can keep him in it. But a good chance here for Oakleigh to double their lead.
It's Joe Guest looking to double his money. He does exactly that. 2 for Guest. 2 for the Cannons, and Oakleigh on course for a maiden Dockerty Cup.
Easy as you like. Buried that right to the back of the net. Great finish there from Joe Guest, and he was the man who kick-started the attack, and he's the man who finishes it there from the spot. Very well played there from Oakleigh. Again, another penalty, another just kick in the guts for Heidelberg to concede 2 goals, not from open play, but conceding them from situations where they've just been caught napping, and the ball is played so quickly to Alex Salmon, and Jamal Ali comes across. He goes through the back of him. You can see why the referee pointed to the spot on that occasion.
And that was emphatically dispatched by Joe Guest. And it looks as though Heidelberg might potentially be making a few. The most important eyewitness in the aftermath of the first penalty. And to take us through the moments leading up to that penalty that's now been dispatched by Joe Guest for his and Oakleigh's second.
Well, the reaction wasn't anywhere near as vociferous as the first one as Oakleigh built an attack.
It's slipped in behind for Alex Salmon, but the offside flag is up, and that's a kick out in frustration that's going to send him into the book. Josh, I'm sure you have more to add from the bench while we get this yellow card for Alex Salmon done with.
Well, there was some protest, but really it was an air of resignation. And I can tell you that Heidelberg were already preparing this change before the penalty was awarded. So the plans haven't changed. Maybe the player coming off has, but they were already putting the paperwork in before Ali made that tackle.
So it does look like it's a double change there. Sean Ellis and Shinsuke Murakami. Not Murakami anymore. It's Sean Ellis coming off.
They've pulled the old bait and switch there.
Yeah, so Mohamed Aidara coming on. Josh, thank you very much for joining us. But yeah, it does seem like that. Yeah, I mean, it looked like they were going defender for, sort of defensive midfielder, but taking off Sean Ellis is something that we anticipated, but we were expecting someone like Owen Ashton or Bilal Habib early. But interesting change here from George Katsakis. They're down 2-0. They've got to throw the kitchen sink at it in these last 30, and dare I say it, Lockie, risk losing by a similar line than they had against Oakleigh this season to try and get something back.
It feels like a massive moment. The 33-year-old Scotsman who bleeds yellow and black for Heidelberg off the field in place of Mohamed Aidara, who, to be fair, has performed very well for the Burgers since signing from State League 2 side Mill Park. Early cross takes a deflection. Boyce can't quite prevent a Heidelberg corner, so some defending for Oakleigh to do in the 63rd minute by the time the corner's taken. Aidara did score in the semi for the Burgers. They scored in the league too. And it's pretty much now or never for Heidelberg. Corner towards Kane Shepherd. Dealt with by the Cannons. Nicolaides. Really big scrap between he and Fechner. And Zara now looking to find Pin at the back post. He's harassed Hampson into a turnover. Collected by Theodoropoulos. And Murakami. First touch for Mohamed Aidara. Cross from Josh Pin is easy pickings for Brodie Boyce. Is this the moment now for Heidelberg? No, Kane Shepherd coming back from an offside position, so it's all going to come to naught. But is this maybe the time for Oakleigh where it's right for them to take the foot off the gas a little bit? Do you start to conserve? Well, do you try and hit on the brake now? Do you let Heidelberg have the bulk of the ball?
Well, it's a busy week coming up from Lockie. They play Tuesday night away at North Geelong and then Sunday against Melbourne City. So it's a big 9 days after this. I think it's still too early because, yes, they have the numerical advantage, but 2-0 is still a very dangerous league to throw around the much-used football cliche. So, I don't know, maybe not just yet. You probably give it another 10-15 minutes and then you look to make those first few substitutions. But even if they do, Lockie, they've got so much quality on the bench. So, yeah, you can take off for Steph Valentini, but you're bringing on Wayne Decker or Chris Lucas. Not many teams outside of the A-League are able to have this sort of quality in their attacking weaponry. So far, so good for them as we see a player down here for Heidelberg in the meantime.
To see some Matilda's beanies in the crowd, as well as a South Springvale one too. International and State League support here at Kingston Heath tonight, and it does seem as though Heidelberg's night might be going from bad to worse here.
Well, it's good to see.
Anthony Theodoropoulos, who's the player on the deck, receiving some treatment, and I'm pretty sure, Nick, off in the distance, stripped down and ready to go, Bilal Habib and Dom Fala. Josh, we might throw it down to you for a second, just to potentially get an update on this injury for Anthony Theo, and to confirm my suspicions that this may well be a double substitution for the Burgers.
Yeah, it looks like a muscle injury in his left leg, Anthony Theodoropoulos, and as soon as his teammates stopped to inspect him, they were calling for the change. So maybe he's been carrying something and they knew instantly, but it seemed like he knew his night was over as soon as he went down. So they're going to make a double change here, Heidelberg.
Thank you very much, Josh. Keeping us up to date against the fence, taking the temperature for us behind a pretty big and boisterous Heidelberg crowd inside the Kingston Heath grandstand. You can see plenty of yellow and black in the background as Dom Fowler makes his way on in place of Anthony Theodoropoulos.
Shout out to the HUFC TV guys there on camera on your left, Greg Blake and Jay Font, John Fotnos down there. Must preface it, and I said it's good to see. It's not good to see Theodoropoulos' injury. I was meant to say it's good to see the Matildas beanies out. Then
yes.
Cut out for a second there, so apologies if that got misconstrued. We hope Anthony Theodoropoulos is all good and it's nothing too serious.
Absolutely. It's been so important for George Katsakis, feeling a need wherever it may be. Salmon doesn't like his options further afield. Hopefully have the luxury now of picking their moments. They've scored 3 goals plus 9 times this season. It'd be a bad time to make it a 10th. Hampson's early cross at the back post was Alex Fechner. The leap wasn't an almightily convincing one, and it's out of play without harm for a Pierce Clark goal kick.
Also, one thing to keep in mind as well, Lockie, talking about short rounds, Heidelberg going to Queensland up to Moreton Bay this week for their round of 32 Australia Cup game. So another short turnaround for them. So you just wonder potentially if there is any sort of, you know, in the last few minutes maybe resting a few sore bodies if this game does fall out of favour and there's real no avenue back, because that's a big game for them, you know, going up to Queensland wanting to, you know, prove themselves on the national stage.
Here's Clark racing off his line. It is next Thursday that they play NPL Queensland outfit Moreton Bay in Queensland, and you really said Queensland like you were a native Queenslander before then. Queensland. Nailed it. You nailed it. Come on, mate. Clark. Oakleigh looking to seal the deal. A third would, without doubt, put this beyond the reach of the Burgers. And they're committing numbers forward with that in mind. Valentini can't clear the traffic. Adrian Zara has been a warrior, if you'll pardon my expression, in this second half. Looks as though we've got a substitution in the offing for the Cannons this time. They blink a little bit earlier than Chris Taylor perhaps is used to. Josh Parrish, what have you got for us up against the touchline? I can see that Alex Fechner is the player who's come off. Who is his replacement, and what is his task going to be as we close out this game?
Well, Brandon Lundy is the player coming on a nominal right back, so we'll see how that, how Oakleigh shape up with that. I think Emlyn Wellsmore might push slightly further forward, but it's certainly a defensive change for Chris Taylor looking to manage the game. And I can tell you that it looked like it was going to be a double change on the Heidelberg bench. Owen Ashton had the bib off, Bilal had bib too, but I think the injury to Anthony Theodoropoulos changed their plans.
Thank you, Josh. And your suspicions confirmed. Brandon Lundy and straight across to join up with the Oakleigh back four, and so Emlyn Wellsmore will take up an advanced position, and that's exactly what he's going to do here. And he's fighting a bit of a one-man battle to keep the ball alive. It'll be a goal kick in the end. Or will it?
No, it's
or
corner.
will it? It's a corner. Well, that is fantastic work from the former Port Melbourne defender Emlyn Wellsmore to win a corner. Certainly relishing the attacking license that Chris Taylor has given him to see out the end of this game. Joe Guest, everything in this game has happened at his boot. It's a great cross into the penalty spot. Valentini keeping it alive at the back post, but a bit of an infringement in byplay. Yanni Jesus draws it dead. And at the moment, Joe Guest's 2 goals from the penalty spot, proving decisive. You do start to think about, Nick, you can't help but wonder at this stage of a game, you start to get into the Mackay medalist conversation. Joe Guest is a hard name to look past for my money.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good shout. I think that we'll leave it for again.
We've spoken him onto the ball. Another delightful one over the top for Alex Salmon. who caught a bit of Anthony Lesiotis. I don't think he intended to do it. I think the ground just gave way beneath his feet and stuck onto Anthony Lesiotis' leg by unfortunate consequence.
Yeah, I think that Joe Guest is a really good shout. I think that he's odds-on favourite to take it out today, but there would be a few others. I think Ollie Kubelay's had a really good game as well in the middle of the park. I thought Daniel Clark's also been quite good. I think they're probably the three players in particular. And also Alex Fechner was very good as well for Oakleigh. So, yeah, they're the three names that sort of spring to mind. Unfortunately for Heidelberg, there probably aren't too many. And I think in a 2-0 loss, it's a bit rare that you'd see someone, unless they had a, over-exceptional, amazing performance to sort of, usurp Joe Guest's effort, that any of them would be taking out the Mackay medalists.
It would take some beating. Flicked on by Shepherd. Pin couldn't bring it back.
There's been some really good performances from Adrian
This
Zara
man on the ball, yeah.
Yeah, and also from Josh Pinn. I think, they've had really good games, Jamal Ali, but yeah, it's just tough. I mean, losing 2-0, you don't usually see a medalist in these sort of cup games come out of a losing side, especially in a 2-0 loss.
No, it looks as though it's on course to end for Heidelberg, just as it did the last time they were in a Dockerty Cup final, suffering a 2-0 defeat to Bentley Greens back in 2018, having won it the year before against that very same opponent. It's been an uphill battle, not quite in the way that they expected. George Katsakis' side. Fala, one of the substitutes. Behind for Pin. Great turn of pace, but Feely is off his line. I think we have seen a couple of times, Nick. Obviously, Nick Feely recovering quickly from injury to play in this game. The effects of that injury still lingering. He's been a bit patient.
And he hasn't had to do much.
No, that's true.
It's also been the beauty. He's been able to have a very quiet night. And they probably could rest him for Tuesday night if they really wanted to. Barring they actually get a goalkeeper back by that stage.
Guest. There's a yard. And now Lundy. Deflected cross. Corner for the Cannons.
It's a big week and a half for Oakleigh, isn't it?
Huge.
Huge week and a half. Can't wait for next Sunday afternoon against Melbourne City. That is going to be huge.
Obviously, we'll have that game against North Geelong as well in the lead up to that. Jack Edwards has been a great place for Australia Cup ties of late. It could be a good place to hold a Dockerty Cup as it's flicked on by Salmon, but well clear of goal in the end. Pierce Clark has got to get the ball moving very quickly. The odds are stacked against the Burgers. Josh Parrish, I might come to you. I can see some potential movement on the substitutes bench, but I'm also going to give you the honour of answering the same question that I threw to Nick before. Potential Mackay medalist, who's standing out for you?
I think it's difficult to go past Joe Guest. He's been the decisive player in this match, and he's been quality every time he's got on the ball. But with the double change coming up for Heidelberg, I can tell you that two of their experienced campaigners are going to be withdrawn. Kane Shepherd and Adrian Zara are coming off.
Wow, that's a bench bombshell. Thank you, Josh. Joe Guest drives in a low cross. It breaks kindly for Alex Salmon, who gets onto the right foot, but Adrian Zara, tireless more in his efforts to keep the Cannon striker at bay.
Just wonder if those two changes are made with Wednesday in mind locking. I do wonder if the trip to Queensland is really front of mind now for George Katsakis.
Clark, edge of the box. Hampson across for Kubelayh, and Oakleigh have switched the locus of attack. It's a fizzing cross, but it's into the breadbasket of Pierce Clark.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but is this the third straight game in all competitions that Heidelberg have had a sending off? Because they had one against North Geelong and Moreland City.
It'd have to
Fact check that one.
They did have a red card, of course, in the semi-final to Adrian Zara, who's unbelievably had 2 red cards in the Cup this season. Hope to escape this final without suffering the same fate. Kubelayh gets the eyes up. Goes laterally for Clark. Hampson Stops and props and picks out Ollie Oakleigh. He's showing a real attacking zeal. Joe Guest has to turn on the afterburners, winds it into the box, but not clear.
So, yep, this is the 4th out of their last 5 games that they've had a red card. And think about the one game they didn't get a red card in their last 5 was their 1-1 draw against Avondale. So, yes, they have. This will be 8 straight games. It'll be 8 out of, I think, the last 9 or 7 out of... My maths is all over the place at the moment. Without a win, but we're just seeing a bit of a coming together there between Steph Valentini and JP. But yeah, I think it's 8 of the last 9 in all competitions without a win. So yeah, and when you look at the recent results, it's been tough going here for Heidelberg. They've been challenging.
Murakami was certainly caught in controversy. In the end, it's Stefan Valentini who heads into the book, and you can see Daniel Clark is across there just trying to calm him down. Josh Pinn, of course, was straight in to let him know what he thought about it as well.
Even Joe Guest, and they're all telling him to calm down. Joe Guest is telling him to calm down. He's even saying, mate, if you're tired, just go off, just come off, you know? Like, I just wonder if it's been an interesting battle with Murakami, a lot of physical sort of coming together, so I do wonder if, as we get towards the last 15 minutes of this game, maybe just a bit of frustration now.
Confirming the reports now of the eagle-eyed Josh Parrish on the boundary. It's Kane Shepherd, whose run of games in the Dockerty Cup with up to the final will come to an end at the final hurdle. He leaves alongside Adrian Zara, the Heidelberg captain, who has run himself into the ground today. Probably been Heidelberg's best of field. Owen Ashton and Bilal Habib are the players who come on to replace him. As you mentioned, Nick, perhaps that is a white flag of sorts from George Kutsaka. A substitution with Australia Cup in mind. And if they get a goal now, it'll be on for young and old. Idara. Plenty for him to aim at in the penalty box if he can find the crossing angle. Ashton swoops it in. Flicked clear by Daniel Clark. Ashton. Smart from Falla. He was collected from behind, and Yanni Zizis is again reaching for the pocketbook. It's Jamal Ali who is going to receive a caution for, I think, an infringement in the build-up. Oakleigh seem as though they might be making another change at this critical juncture. Josh Parrish, what have you got for us?
Well, gentlemen, I can tell you that it's really kicked off with Stefan Valentini. There was a behind play in the lead up to his yellow card between Valentini and Josh Pinn. Josh Pinn really going after him after what he perceived was...
Josh, go have a look what's happening on your right there, mate.
The yellow card has been shown to Savas Matikis, and it's really kicking off with the supporters as well behind the fence. Very unhappy about this.
Well, it's all unravelling a little bit for the Burgers. Stefan Valentini just have to keep a cool head. Thank you for your insight, Josh, on the touchline.
Someone just grabbed the Bunnings chair in that whole fracas. Little whatever was going on over there. Just having a fracas is probably a bit of a dramatic word, but you know, the whole coming together there. Someone just picked up the chair and a bit of frustration.
12 minutes this game plus stoppage to come. It would be a miracle for Heidelberg from this position. But Nick, what have they been called time and again over the course of the NPL? The cardiac kids.
I was going to say about the other word, about what Oakleigh have been called in the past, colloquially. But yes, they are known as the cardiac kids for a reason, Heidelberg. And quick goal and things can change. Just looking at Steph Valentini coming off with a smile on his face, laughing as he does the long walk around the pitch past Shinsuke Murakami. For those who have seen Steph Valentini over a long time, Lockie, this is really no surprise to see him with a smile on his face and enjoying enjoying the entertainment, the theatre of the contest.
No, he runs around with plenty of chirp and plenty of skill, and always leaves with a smile, Stefan Valentini. And he is
one of the great entertainers of NPL Victoria.
Getting set to pick up his second Dockerty Cup. Pierce Clark comfortably into the danger area to keep it away from the clutches of Alex Salmon. Stefan Valentini, of course, a Dockerty Cup winner in 2021 with Avondale, alongside his now Oakleigh teammate Brandon Lundy. But the rest of this Oakleigh side, with the exception of Chris Lucas, will be tasting Dockerty Cup glory for the first time should they close out this result. Murakami. Mlinaric hasn't had much to do in this game other than to send those crosses back where they came. Fala has come off the bench and taken the captain's armband since Adrian Zara's departure. Lesiotis.
Just watching Stefan. Maybe we'll go to Josh soon, because Valentini's doing now the walk in front of the grandstand. So I'm curious to find out in just a sec when play sort of peters out.
Nodded down to Ashton. Ali has to bend it around the body of the substitute, Wade Decker. No stranger to scoring in cup competitions, having nailed one against Sydney FC in that famous Australia Cup game last year. Wellsmore. Lundy. Oakleigh looking to start